Good evening, and thank you for joining the meeting of the Hampden Town Council for Monday, March 17th, 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise as we pay tribute to the brave men and women in uniform currently serving in harm's way. I have asked my son Joshua to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As to not disturb our meeting, please place your cell phones on silent or vibrate. Members of the public are reminded that all comments being made are being broadcast live over cable television and over the internet and may be recorded and rebroadcast over the internet outside of council control. We will now move on to councilor introductions. We'll start with Councilor Shakespeare. Please give us your name and what street you live on.
Councilor William Shakespeare, Western Avenue.
Jean Lawless, 55 Kincaid Road.
Dr. Thomas Brand, Western Avenue.
David Ryder, 315 Meadow Road.
Ivan McPike, Marion Drive, District 1.
Greg Royce, 89 Carmel Road South, at large.
And my name is Carol Dupre. I live on Monroe Road. We're also joined at our table by Susan Lassard, our town manager, Tom Russell, our town attorney, and Denise Hodgson, our town clerk. Is there a member of the public, consent agenda, sorry. Is there a member of the public who wishes to comment on any items on today's consent agenda? Seeing none, public comment closed. Does anyone wish to set aside any items from the consent agenda? Unless there's an objection, the consent agenda will be considered adopted. Wrong thing. Public comments. This is the time where for the public to address the council on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. All comments are to be directed through the chair, and debate with individual councilors is not allowed. Per council rules, comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. At the conclusion of public comments, and at my discretion, I will allow councilors to address any comments made by members of the public in a respectful manner. When you come to the podium, please state your name, address, and the subject of your comments of record. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to address the council? Public comment closed. Public hearings. Ordinance. Sorry, what's that? Policy agenda, public hearings. Ordinance regarding Town Charter Amendment, Section 807, District Boundaries. Denise, could you give us some background, please?
Pursuant to state law, excuse me, after the census in 2010, we were required to redistrict the reallocate the 4 district council districts, to even out the population in each district. I've put 2 maps up on the wall. The map on the left is the current council districts, which when you superimpose the census blocks on top of those, it revealed that our districts were not evenly portioned. So we have come up with a new allocation of the districts, and because the districts are now or are defined in the town charter, this will require an amendment to the charter. So we have drawn up the district boundaries put those into an ordinance for a public hearing this evening, and if the public hearing, if the council adopts this ordinance, then we also need to direct this to go on the ballot for the June election.
Thank you, Denise. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance regarding Town Charter Amendment, Section 807, District Boundaries. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in favor? Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak neither for nor against, but have further information they would like to share? This public hearing is now closed. What is the pleasure of the council? Do I have a motion?
I'd be glad to make a motion and tell me what you'd like moved. How would you like it stated?
For this ordinance to be adopted?
To-
To adopt the ordinance.
I move that we adopt the ordinance and to send to referendum at the June election.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
No, there's discussion.
Oh, discussion. Sorry.
In a bit of a rush. I have a problem in that. I have a problem in that section 801, page 15 of the town charter identifies regular elections as being the second Tuesday, the Monday after the first Tuesday in November, and that's where it defines regular elections. There is no other regular election defined anywhere that I could find within the town charter. And section 1003.2, section 2 talks about the elections for making changes in the town charter, and it says, "Election shall be held at the next regular municipal election." We only have one regular municipal election, and that's in November, and the section 2 of the charter requires that the election for charter changes take place at a regular election. So we can either ignore the town charter, in which case I don't know why we want to worry about changing it in the first place.
I do know that this, according to the state laws, this has to be done before November, correct? We can't wait until November?
It's my understanding that the deadline for this is June 14th. It's, Attorney Russell, if you could help me out, I can't remember. It was,
You're correct at what the charter provision says, but what we're up against with given the statute that requires the redistricting, is if we don't enact this so it's effective for the November election this year, all 4 district councilors at that time would be elected at large. And Denise and I consulted and decided that this would be the lesser of 2 evils, to be honest with you, because we don't think it's anybody's intent to have the 4 district councilors go to at-large position, and they would serve in that capacity for 3 years until we enact the ordinance, and then would go back to district councilor. So we've got a discrepancy, no disagreement with that, but we've elected to as I said, pick the lesser of 2 evils as we see it and proceed accordingly. So, because it has to be enacted at least 90 days before the election. So.
Well, I understand, I've heard the explanation before, but I'm concerned because, one, it is in violation of the town charter, and if we change the districts, I mean, changing the districts, we can pass the ordinance, that's not a problem. It's the election date that I have a problem with, and if we don't follow, in my mind, if we don't follow the town charters, the provision as to when that election is supposed to take place, then we run the risk of someone deciding to challenge any of the councilors that are elected to districts, because state law, or the state law provision is that all should be at large, not elected to an individual district. And if the state law should govern in this situation, then we're in a situation where two-thirds of the three-fourths of the community has not had the right to vote on their representatives because they were not voted at large, they were voted within a district, and I just see a gigantic mess developing. And I don't see this as being a desirable solution without some kind of a ruling from the State Attorney General's office or Maine Law Court or something.
Counselor Shakespeare?
Yeah, with all due respect to our attorney, I think I heard him say, we have decided to accept the lesser of the two evils. Now, who is we?
That would be the town clerk and myself in consultation with the manager.
Okay. However, we are all sworn to uphold the town charter. So I don't see how, I realize the predicament, but I don't see how you can just ignore, I mean, might as well throw the town charter out then if we're going to just decide, oh, well, this is the less of the two evils and we're going to do it this way. It seems like maybe somebody didn't do prior planning in a timely manner or something, or that we've gotten in this predicament, but I just, no, wait a minute, I just don't believe we can ignore our charter, because we're sworn to uphold it, and otherwise just throw it out.
Counselor Lawless?
I understand that these kinds of things happen all the time where there are laws that are in conflict, and it's not uncommon to decide that one's going to prevail. And maybe we can get an opinion from someone. Doesn't usually state law, take precedence when it's in conflict with a town thing? And can you get someone in higher authority to concur that we're doing, in their opinion, the right thing?
Well, we could check that out, but the statute dealing with reapportionment only says that the municipal legislative body, which is the town council, has to adopt an ordinance to do the redistricting. So you could argue that it doesn't need to go to referendum. But unfortunately, our district regulations are in the town charter. And so that's why we're sort of backstopping it by adopting the ordinance like the statute says, and then submitting it to the town for a vote.
May I say something? This June election is the first election that, since the legislature adopted their own redistricting, that there has been an opportunity for this to move before the people. When they did that last year, had we tried to do redistricting, we would have negated that November election. There was not sufficient time between when the legislature adopted theirs in order to get it in front of ours in the November, and still have the November elections move forward. That would not work. June is the first that it was available to do so, and so it was not that people were not doing this in a timely manner. The staff has put this in front of the council as soon as it could without making last November's election unable to move forward. That at the very least, I believe the council should adopt the ordinance and check for this. I am pretty sure the intent of the law is not to undo districting in the town of Hampden in terms of the redistricting provision. And the fact that the state took as long as it did to get to where it did in redistricting is what's put us in this position. But and there are segments of the charter, with all due respect, that are worthless, because there are sections that we have found that are superseded by state law, and we can't now do whatever. But the not moving forward here mean, if the council determines that it is going to go by the letter of the charter in terms of this, there will not be districts elected. There will be all at large elected in November through no fault of our own in getting this in front of the council or in front of the public. And I think that is a bad idea. I think that is a bad idea. I don't think that was the intent of the legislature, the intent of law, or the intent of this charter, that for some reason put in that it had to be. That definition was changed in 2004. Nobody's quite sure why. Because prior to that, it didn't require that it be at a regular election. It required that it be at an election.
The problem is we have the charter we have to live with, and we swore to uphold the charter. And we need either, the solution, and we can't change the charter until November, because that's our next regular election. The election in June is not a regular election. And if this were a case where a petition for the change, to reconsider, a referendum to reconsider or force the council to consider an item for which it may took an order or an ordinance or something like that, that wording clearly says at the next scheduled election. That's different than next regular election. And for some reason, the people who had the authority, which we don't have at this time until November, to change the charter, decided that changing or having regular at the position relative to the charter to make sure the maximum population of the town of Hampden was involved in that process. It's a relatively important document to everyone in the town of Hampden, and not just the people who attend the much smaller election in June. And that was I have to assume that was a conscious decision and not a haphazard decision. And I have no problem with going ahead and approving the ordinance. There's nothing that restricts that. It's putting up to election at that time. And if necessary, the town needs to go back and ask the legislature or somebody in the legislature, state attorney general's office or someone, to see if there's a way to straighten out the mess and make it possible for us to get a postponement in terms of the edict, and make the new districting have to be done after November or December. Have them change their date. Maybe they have the flexibility to do that, but we don't. Our hands are tied.
And I'm not against this plan. I'm for this plan, obviously. We all are. But this we stuff alarms me that we decided, with all due respect, to do this, okay, knowing that the town charter said we can't do it. So my concern is, what are we doing legally here? Since we all took an oath to uphold the charter. And, that's my only concern is like I say, let's not uphold the charter in many other instances then.
Well, your oath was also to uphold the laws of the state of Maine, too.
I was gonna
so that's
point
where
that
the
out.
That's where the rub is. So.
Yeah, because we can't do both.
But then we get a conflict.
We
We
need a
swore
clear-
an oath we can't keep because we can't do both.
We need a clarification, and there was concern about invalidating last November's election. Well, I'm more concerned about next November's election. That's the one I'm worried about right now. And this would put a shadow on the election in November, and we just need to have it clarified. If the state says, well, no, this is it, and we're not changing our date, we're not going to give you an extension, we're not going to move that, then I guess we have to go along with state law, which says we can't possibly, because of their actions, redistrict, and we're going to have to go to at large.
Okay, if we as a council adopt the ordinance and put it up for election in June, and it passes, unless we have a public outcry because people didn't get to vote on it, because they didn't vote in June, is it an issue?
That's a lawyer's question.
Attorney Russell?
It could be. I'm not going to deny that.
What is a, if I may ask, what is a public outcry?
Well, I'm just saying that As-
We represent the public right
we
here.
do, I'm talking about, as Tom was saying, people who,
Which Tom?
Counselor Brand
Okay.
was saying, people that didn't get to vote because they don't vote at the smaller elections in June may get upset that they didn't get to vote on this ordinance, which I understand. But in my opinion, I think they may get more upset that they have no representation for their district because we did not vote this in, and now we have to vote everybody at large.
But again, it's not our fault. And if I drive 114 miles down the interstate, miles an hour down the interstate, and nobody complains, that doesn't make it right. I'm in violation of the law. And we are sworn to honor the law, not honor what people may or may not complain about.
Is there anyone else who has an opinion on this? Any other counselors?
I guess my question is, if we voted to accept this ordinance the way it is, and then didn't put it to public vote until November, we've still enacted to change our districts, which the state says we need to do. So we've done our part. Now we've got to wait to satisfy the charter. I mean,
I don't think that that'll work because our charter says to change the districts, we have to do a charter change, which means it has to be voted on. If we accept the ordinance,
Right.
unless it's voted on, it doesn't change. If it doesn't go out for vote, everyone would still have to be elected at large in November.
if it goes out in November to be voted on,
But people take out papers in August.
Right.
The only way that I can see to clearly, to solve this is to try and get the state to move their must be done by date. Other than that, we're stuck.
Well, that's in the actual statute, so that's not likely to
Not going to happen.
It's not a rule that an agency can
Okay,
alter.
then sadly, we're stuck unless we get a special act of the legislature to unstuck it.
Charter changes can't be voted on until November.
No,
No.
you can't. Well, it's the same principle. The charter says it has to be voted on in November, so no matter what amendment we're doing, normally we'd vote on it at the regular election. Like I say, this was a unique circumstance, and
Where it satisfies state law, which is what this vote would do, but it doesn't satisfy the portion of the charter that says after that is adopted, that it has to be approved at the regular. But
see what,
the conflict is between the state law and the charter in terms of what that
Correct,
requirement is.
correct. And we need to straighten that out, because there are people that are in one of the districts or in an area where the district is changing, and if the district hasn't been changed before November, which we can't do because we can't change it until November, then they'd be voting in the wrong district. Or if we change it early and that's invalid because we can't do that until November, then somebody else is voting in the wrong district. And we can't do that.
Denise?
If this doesn't pass and doesn't go to referendum in August, when nomination papers become available, all candidates will be taking out at-large papers. There'll be no districts, so it won't matter which district anyone lives in, because they'll be voting on everybody.
I think this is one of the instances where, and we've found a few in our charter, where the, sorry about that, where the state law is in conflict with our charter. And in most of those instances, the state law takes precedence. I know your objection. I would like to know other counselors' objections. I understand that this is a problem, and it's something that obviously we have to look at some other issues with the charter. This is one of them. I think that we should look at adopting the ordinance and putting it out for a vote in June. Whether or not that is overturned later, that's something we'll have to deal with then. That is my opinion. I would like to know what the other counselors' opinions are. Our choices are either we go at large or we vote on this in June. Those are the only two
Is
choices.
there any way we can delay the election of councilors
No.
to beyond November?
No, without violating the same charter.
And people's
Just a
terms,
question.
people's terms are up too, so.
And, well, yeah, but if we don't have a charter, because we don't want to honor the entire charter, then the terms don't necessarily have to be up. We can skip that. I mean, that's the problem. If we're going to skip one thing, we can skip anything that we want in the charter. And no, we can't.
Okay, I would like to continue with other counselors. Go ahead, Counselor McPike.
I'm not so sure I agree with the fact that we can skip anything we want in the charter, because I think you consistently hear what the intent is. And we see that all the day legally now, all the time coming up legally, is what is the intent of the law as compared to the way it was written. Obviously, the state and our charter have a conflict here, but I think the intent is that we get the districts down and get them voted on so that we could continue the same way regardless. And I think probably Attorney Russell would agree with that, even though we are going against the state. But the fact of the matter comes down, if we don't do that, then we become at large. And I personally have no problem in staying with the fact that we do it in June and we continue with our districts.
Counselor Soroy
What he said.
and Counselor Shakespeare, anything additional?
I have a problem violating the charter. I took an oath to it, like the rest of us here, and I don't care what the intent of the state was. You know, it's you say you're going to do something and you're going to honor this, well, then you've got to honor it. And that's why we need, what do you call it, Tom, codification, is it, of our charter, because some things are out of whack. So, and this is one of the things out of whack, but I just don't see how we can overlook it just because we want to. So, if we're going to overlook this, let's overlook other things.
Counselor Lawless?
I don't know. I'm definitely conflicted because we did take an oath, and the oath was to comply with the state laws and the charter, and we can't do both. So when Ivan said intent, I think when the people modified the charter, whoever they were, it wasn't their intent to make it so that people couldn't vote in a timely way on new district proposals that were in accordance with state law. So I'd like to get, some further opinion from somebody that says that, letting the state law, drive our decision, and putting an interpretation on the intent of the charter is an okay thing to do. But, given that would be supported, and I know I'm violating my oath, but whichever way I go, I'm violating my oath. I think that fits the intent the best, and that's what I would support.
Unfortunately, we, as a council, uphold our charter. We can get opinions from other people, but what we do is really up to us. And we are the ones that have to live with it, and we are the ones that have to decide it. So we, like I said, we can get opinions from the state, but the decision is up to us because it is our charter. Yes, Councilor Brand.
The fact that regular election is in that and was added was changed in 2004 does not tell me that it was a mistake. It tells me that somebody conscientiously wanted to make sure that the maximum opportunity for everybody to participate in the election process was provided, because the June election has been a lesser election, because the most important thing that was done there was the school budget. And the turnout, and you can check all of our records, the turnout at the June election, I'm sure, has always been much less than the regular election. And I think the fact that why define a regular election in one section of the charter and then refer to it in another section of the charter if you don't mean it? That was a conscious act, conscious decision. We also have records. We can go back to 2004 and look it up and see what the discussion intent was. We need to have, and it is possible to honor both our oath to state law and our oath to the town law, simply, but we can pass the ordinance, we can make the changes, we can go through and not put it on the election till November. We can ratify it in November, and then if people wish to, they can resign their post on the council and have another election right away to re-elect people to districts. And under those circumstances, we can honor both. If we do not hold the election in June, then we're honoring both the state law and the town charter.
Councilor
Yeah,
McPike, yes.
could you explain that again to me, Tom? When you're talking about sending it on to be elected and then resigning and then...
Well, there's no, and I'd be perfectly willing to do that. I mean, hold the election with people being elected at large in November, and then in November, if the town decides to, if the citizens decide to pass the redistricting, then all those who got elected in November resign, and we hold another election.
But then
to
you
the
have
districts.
a special election, which is a large cost to the
Well-
town, and then, again, you have a
Again, we
small
don't make
election.
decisions based on the cost. We have to do what is right.
I would like to, since we have a motion, we have a second, we've had all the discussion, I would like to have a vote for passing the ordinance and putting it on the June ballot, yes.
Just to follow up one thing with Tom, I don't know what took place in 2004, and I happen to agree with the fact that it was consciously done probably so that whatever was done, it would take place in November with a higher thing, but I wonder if at that time the intent was that they realized it was going to involve redistricting, or was that just something that was not thought of at the time?
It's all, the regular election is only mentioned two places in the charter. Once when it defines the regular election, and once when it says under changing the charter, regular election. Only two places, just two places.
And again, I agree with that. I completely understand, and I think that it was consciously for that reason, so most people would be there. But I don't think that anyone foresaw this coming up either. So again, the intent, I don't think, was to have a problem like this.
With all due respect, you don't have the training nor the experience to make an intent decision. That's to
And
Maine Law
neither
Court,
do
or
any of
to the
us.
State Attorney General's office, or to the legislature to do something, not you.
Councilor Lawless.
That it, refers to any charter changes. It isn't really directed at redistricting. So it could have been an oversight, but we don't really know. We don't,
Right.
without going back and looking at the discussion, we don't really know. Now, some people have objected to the statement, well, we thought it was a lesser of two evils. I, on the other hand, think if I was going to look to two people who have expertise in the law and elections, I would look to Tom Russell and Denise, right, to make a reasoned, thoughtful, recommendation. Maybe it should have been shared with us that there was a conflict, but I don't question their judgment and expertise, and would go with what they, think is the best thing to do.
Okay, so I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance regarding Town Charter Amendment, Section 807, district boundaries, and putting it on the ballot for the public to vote on in June. All those in favor? Opposed?
I refuse to participate. You cannot instruct me to violate my oath.
Okay. Motion carries. Nominations, appointments, and elections. We have 4 appointments to the Recreation Committee. The chair recognizes Councilor Lawless in regards to these appointments.
Okay, I have to pull up my computer because this long discussion caused it to
To
turn
sleep.
itself off, right, and that's where I keep the agenda. Oh, yeah, you can give it to me. I'll turn on my microphone, too. We met with these 4 candidates at the last Services Committee meeting, and they described their experiences. They were all very well qualified and enthusiastic, and we're going to be recommending that each of these candidates individually be appointed to the Recreation Committee. So I'd like to make a motion first that Nancy Fenders be appointed to the Recreation Committee.
First of all, are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the appointment of Nancy Fenders? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion by Councilor Lawless, second by Councilor Ryder, to appoint Nancy Fenders to the Recreation Committee. All those in favor? Motion carries.
And we would like to recommend that Jonathan Perry also be appointed to the Recreation Committee.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the appointment of Jonathan Perry to the Recreation Committee? Okay, seeing none.
So I would like to make a motion that Jonathan Perry be appointed to the Recreation Committee.
Okay. We have a motion by Councilor Lawless, second by Councilor Ryder, to accept Jonathan Perry's appointment to the Recreation Committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that Jessica O'Neill be appointed to the Recreation Committee.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the appointment of Jessica O'Neill to the Recreation Committee? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Lawless, second by Councilor Ryder, to accept Jessica O'Neill's appointment to the Recreation Committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Jason Sharp to the Recreation Committee.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the appointment of Jason Sharp to the Recreation Committee? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilor Lawless, second by Councilor Ryder, to accept Jason Sharp's appointment to the Recreation Committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. All right. And now we have unfinished business. Bangor Humane Society contract for 2014-2015 was discussed in the Finance and Administration Committee. This has been postponed. We are looking to get further information. Okay, thank you. And next item is item 3B, consideration of videotaping RSU 22 school board meetings at RSU 22 response. Counselor Soroy, can you explain this a little to the public, please?
What's that? Yeah, Sue.
Oh, it would
Be
be
me.
Sue. Sorry.
That's okay. At the Goals and Objectives session in February, there was a consensus of the council for me to explore the idea of looking at videotaping school board meetings. And I sent an email to the school board, the school superintendent, informing him of that and asking if he wanted me to meet with the board or anyone to talk about how this would work or whatever. And he didn't, but he placed it on a couple of the agendas for the school board, and you have in your packet the response from RSU 22 to the proposal to videotape school board meetings, in which they respectfully decline our offer to do so. And it's on the agenda for the council to tell me if you wish to pursue this further or if you wish to take this no thank you as the answer.
Thank you. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Brian Dupre, 64 Monroe Road.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Brian, President of Monroe Road. At the Services Committee last week meeting, Mayor Dupre filled me in on some of the things that went on. I didn't get a chance to hear most of the meeting. She told me that you guys were off the record talking about the recording and videotaping of RSU 22 school board meetings. And Terry McAvoy came up to the chair off the meeting and said, when did the council vote to authorize that? And I told him that the council had not authorized it. And I was perplexed as to why the town council feels that the public deserves the right to see what goes on at a school board meeting, but yet refuses to let the public see what happens at its own committee. It seems awfully hypocritical. It doesn't pass the street rules. Now, I agree and support all public meetings being recorded and accessible to those with disabilities who cannot live into a live meeting. The public should be informed. But I think it's very wrong to hold the school board to a higher standard than you hold yourselves. Either reconsider my zero-cost option to record all council meetings or vote against this measure to show the public you believe in fairness and full transparency in all levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment? Seeing none, public comment closed. What is the pleasure of the council? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with videotaping of RSU 22 school board meetings. That's it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Counselor discussion? Counselor Shakespeare?
Who's going to pay for this?
The town?
At the time the proposal was initially made during goals and objectives, it was that this would come from the communications budget of the town. There was an estimate of the amount per hour times approximately 2 hours per meeting times 2 meetings per month, and that was, the estimate was given to the council, and it was said at that time that it would come from the town's communications budget. It wasn't a vote, it was an explore this option, find out the school's response to this, which is what I did.
Now, from what I remember, what we discussed is there is extra money in the communications budget because of programming we used to do that we no longer do. Is that correct?
That's right.
Any other discussion?
But yet we don't want to spend money on, like our representative said, on videoing. Well, one thing he said was I think he said the town meetings. I don't know if he meant the committee meetings or not, but town meetings are recorded and videoed as they are right now. But I have a issue and a problem with this, with the town spending money on this personally, because all I hear is taxpayers coming up here saying, we don't want to spend money on this, we don't want to spend money on that, we don't want the mill rate to go up, but here we're going to, I don't care where it's coming from, it's still money out of the town. And I think if people want to go over and video personally, go ahead and do it. But I will not support the town paying for it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
can answer that.
Councilor Soroy,
I think
yes.
it's important where where the school board is responsible for 57% of our budget, and I think it's important for the residents of this town to understand the impact the school board has. At the end of the day, we have to pay that 57%, 58%, but the only thing they see is us speaking about our part of the budget, which is 38%, yet the board that's responsible for the largest part of our budget is not under review in the sense of being recorded or taped. So I think they should see both aspects, both the town council, the committee meetings, as well as the school board meetings, to understand fully what's going on, especially when it comes to our taxes and the spending of our monies.
Any other discussion? Councilor Lawless?
Of course, I've got a, more complicated take on it. Just not, all meetings are not of the same importance. And I agree that, like, the biggest part of our tax dollars goes to the school system. And I think, having been to a lot of school board meetings, being a teacher, there's a lot of discussion about, should we approve this textbook purchase? But the budget meetings, right, the budget meetings are really important meetings. And if we were going to pick and choose what to broadcast, I would focus on the budget meetings.
Councilor Brand?
As usual, I'm not going to be very popular on this, but a correction. The money that goes to SAD 22 is not part of our budget at all. They make up 0% of our budget. We function as a pass-through. The school board authorizes a budget. We have no control over it. We have no say in it whatsoever, other than providing citizens' comments or town comments, but they still do exactly as they please. We are required by law to collect the money and pass it forward. They are not part of our budget. And secondly, we have no authority whatsoever over the SAD 22. They are totally independent of us. We do not have the right to tell them to do anything. We can make requests, but we cannot order them to do anything. They're not subject to us. They're not part of town government. They are an independent organization, and we do not have the right, in my mind, we do not have the right to take citizens' money and spend it on a totally independent agency. That'd be like to say, no, well, let's go down and record everything that goes on in the Congregational Church, because, well, heck, they may see something about the town that we want to see, so we ought to broadcast that too. It just starts to get ridiculous. And again, my final comment is on the goals and objectives. This was in the list of goals and objectives, and that's why I was a little concerned earlier, because it appeared on the list. Someone said it would be a nice idea. It's something we should talk about. Without talking about it, without going to very much discussion, we have counselors going out telling the school board, we're going to come over and do it because it's our right, and we're going to do it anyways. And I think that is really overstepping our bounds. It's overstepping our responsibility. We'll do a much better job of taking the money that we don't want to spend on a school officer to make our children safer, and pile that away, hold on to that, so that later on we can provide a school officer rather than videotaping school meetings that we have nothing to do with. And all it's going to do is throw up another obstacle between friendly relationships with SAD 22 in the town of Hampden. And I think this is a major error if the council decides to pass this.
Councilor Soroy?
First of all, do our tax dollars go to the school? Do tax dollars go to the school?
We function as a pass-through. We do not.
Our tax dollars go to the school, so we have all the right in the world to understand. People need to understand whether we have a right or have any say on what we have to give them. Doesn't mean that it doesn't impact everybody that's sitting in this audience and the people watching on TV. 57% of our monies go to support the school.
Then get up, walk over to school meetings, and talk to the school.
Wait.
They could do the same thing with us.
Wait a minute. Wait, one counselor at a time. Goes through the chair, please. Do not argue amongst each other. Councilor Soroy, please continue.
The other point I want to make, and I find it ironic that Councilor Brand's talking about overstepping bounds when I've witnessed you in this chamber asking someone to be removed by law enforcement because they were speaking their opinion. To me, that's overstepping bounds. My ability to talk to someone, whether it's a family member, a friend, a member of this council, a member of the school board, a person in the public, if they're misinformed or they're under the wrong perception, I will correct them. And that's nothing more than I did, was correct them, make sure they understand that they can't say we won't. We have the right, and we, as stewards of this town, of the town, and representatives of the residents of this town, and as well as stewards of the town's money, to make sure that people, not to control what they're doing, because we can't, but to make sure people are informed. Because people get upset with you and I when their taxes go up. But people need to understand we're doing everything possible with what we control. They need to understand what's going on across the street. And that's the reason I'm supporting this.
Madam Mayor, I ask that you allow public comment because when you started the conversation, you didn't explain that you were going to make a decision against the school. I thought this was just information. I respectfully ask you to speak.
First of all, that it's consideration of videotaping for the school. It's not against the school. It's taping the meetings, but I still did have one counselor that was trying to make a comment.
The only thing I asked was that you said it's consideration and it sounded like there was a vote. If there's not a vote to go to, then I don't need to interrupt you.
Yes, there will be a vote when we are done, yes. Did you have anything further?
Yeah, has a motion been made?
Yes, a motion's been made and seconded.
Was there public discussion invited prior to that motion?
Yes, there was.
All right. I don't remember that invitation for public discussion.
There was. Yes, there was, because Brian Dupre came up and spoke. That was during public
All right.
discussion. Did you have anything further on the motion?
Again, we're overstepping our bounds. And
Okay, anything further that you haven't already said?
if I can finish without being interrupted, you could have said point of order and I would have been quiet, but you can't just interrupt me because you want to.
Point of order.
Yes?
Could you please state anything further that you haven't already stated, if you have any additional comments? Thank you.
Well, no, I'm not going to get into a debate over history with Councilor Sorois, even though he's incorrect.
Does anyone have any additional comments that they have not already made? Yes, Councilor Lawless.
I was wondering, Attorney Russell, if you had any perspective on the autonomy of the school and our right to do something that they don't want to have done, you know, when we regard it as a public service and they have a different opinion, and it's their public meeting. I mean, can you give us any clarity on that?
Well, their meetings are open to the public, and anybody, including the town, has a right to videotape those meetings. They're public proceedings. So the fact that they'd rather you not doesn't really mean that you can't legally do it. So, and, you know, a member of the public could do it, town could do it, they're a public meeting.
Councilor McPike.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back, Bill. We're going to sit here and probably try to nickel and dime ourselves to death on whether we fill a pothole or not, because the money crunch is going to come back and sit in your and my lap. And yet, we still don't provide anything to the public as to what happens across the street. Now, I understand that that's a separate entity on its own. I understand that it goes out to vote on its own. But I always have significantly seen it does take place in June, when we have the least amount of voters, as we've already discussed. And it's those people that want to carry their children forward in that want to get out and vote, and not the other public that gets out. So I do get concerned with the fact that we don't allow the videotaping, and I have absolutely no problem when it comes down to paying for it whatsoever, the amount, because we're going to start dollaring ourselves to death here as to what we want to do. And that's a huge, huge amount that we have to collect the taxes for. And when it comes back to getting beat on the head as to where we're going to cut, it comes back on our lap again as to saying, you cut here in the town. And I mean, it gets down to the point of where you're either going to raise your taxes, okay, which is what the case may well be, or you're going to sit down and say, let's start doing away with fire trucks and cruisers and other things. And so I am in favor of having this done. I am in favor of educating the public what takes place and what's being done, and I firmly agree that the budget committees ought to definitely be done. But I don't have any problem with doing all of the school meetings.
If I
Are
may
there-
respond,
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Counselor
I think you
Shakespeare.
said something about where we should be responsible for videoing or showing the public what's going on over there. Did I hear that? As such?
I said I don't have any problem with it.
Okay. I do have a problem. I have a problem with the fact that two things here. Number one, I don't feel that we as a council discuss this ahead of time, other than in goals and objective, that this would be a great idea, or we discussed. I just don't, this all of a sudden just has come up out of thin air, other than it was in goals and objective. And I heard Councilor Soroyce, I think, at one of the committee meetings, discuss the fact that he had been over there and told them, or told a teacher, so I'm not sure, somebody, okay, you can correct me, that you had spoken to somebody and told them they didn't have a choice, that we could, I don't know if it was we or you can correct me, okay? I'm not picking on you. And I just feel this, all of a sudden, we really haven't given it a lot of forethought, other than in goals and objectives. And I don't think it's our responsibility as a council to show the public what's going on over there. It's like our attorney said, it's a public meeting. Anybody can go over there. I just don't think the public, even though you've had public comment, has had time enough to say, okay, I want this town to spend $2,000 or whatever it is of my tax money to video the school. Yes, personally, I would love to see what goes on at committee meetings. But, you know, like Councilor Brand says, geez, are we going to video this? Are we going to video the police department when they have this event and that event or whatever? And it's just, I think it's getting out of hand, all this videoing, personally. So, and maybe Councilor Soroyce wants to respond to correct me on something I said. I don't know.
Okay, Counselor Soroy, quickly, and then we'll go to
Yeah, the
vote.
conversation I had was with a member of the school board at a personal function, and we were talking, and it wasn't me in her face telling her she had no choice. It was a very friendly conversation. But I was informing her that, no, you understand. They said, well, it's in our minutes. We're not going to do it. I said, you understand? And she goes, yeah, anybody can film it. So she knew that we could do it. And again, this is, for me, it's nothing more than keeping the public informed, not only what goes on in these chambers, but what goes on at the school board, because of the impact at the end of the day it's going to have on all of us, including those of us sitting around the chambers right now. And our chambers are empty tonight because most people right now are either watching this on TV or they buzz in like I did for 4 years on a Saturday night when I'm bored out of my mind watching the council meetings. People don't have time, or have families that don't have time to get out and to come to these meetings. Being able to watch it streamed, whether it's on TV or on the internet, to me is invaluable. Again, it's all about educating the public. It's not anything I have against many of those board members are good friends of mine, against the school board, against the school district, or anything else. I have children, but I think our residents need to understand both sides and need to be educated on that, and that's my whole gist behind it.
Okay,
And I just want to, if I may.
quickly, please.
Okay. I just
Thank
want to
you.
explain in advance my vote. I'm going to vote against it, but if there was a motion that said, let's record the budget meetings for the school board, I would absolutely vote for that. I think it would be less than a third of the cost and get at 95% of the benefit.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd just like to respond to Bill. You talked about putting this out and discussing it, and we haven't done anything with it. We are doing that now. It's brought up, and we're going through all the motions now that we need to go through, rather than going through it in a different meeting and then turn around and saying, okay, let's bring it to this meeting. We're actually going through that now, which is whether it was set up in a meeting that we had earlier or whatever. So I find this beneficial that we are doing it now, and that we are getting it out, and it is going before the council.
If I may.
Okay.
I know you don't want to drag this out, but, yeah, no, I understand, Ivan, Councilor McPike. And I know we're doing it right now, but I just feel all of a sudden it's just come up, and we're going to vote on it, and I don't feel the public out there has really had an opportunity. They're watching it, yes, right now. We're all being watched, but I don't think they've had an opportunity. And I agree with Gene here that there's a lot of, I'll call it minutia that probably goes on at these meetings that the public's just going to put them to sleep. Like this meeting here probably puts a lot of the public to sleep. They're probably yawning out there right now, saying, my God, get going with it. But the budgets and what goes on there at the school, I think would be very interesting to the public. But as far as, what book we're going to supply to the library, and I don't know. Ivan knows more what goes on there than I do. I attended a couple of the school board meetings, and they're about as exciting as this meeting at times, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. Because we have a motion and a second, I am not going to allow any more public comment. And I would,
It would be much easier to be able to make a public comment. We understood the nature of the subject that you were asking the comments on, and you did not make that clear.
I apologize for not making it clear. We have a motion and a second. The motion is to tape the RSU school board meetings with the money for that coming out of the communications budget. Motion was made by Councilor Soroy, seconded by Councilor McPike. All those in favor? Opposed? 4-2, motion carries. 4-3, sorry. I can't count today. 4-3, motion carries. All right, balance of sewer commitments, October 1st, 2013 till December 31st, 2013. Sue, could you explain this to the public, please?
Several weeks ago, the council approved the sewer commitment for the October 1st to December 31st time period, those charges. It was discovered after that was done that 76 accounts were not billed as part of that billing that had usage. I took this to the Finance Committee for a recommendation, and the Finance Committee's recommendation is to also commit this additional $6,222.69 from these 76 accounts for collection in that period.
Are there any members of the public that wish to comment? Sorry, are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this item? Public comment closed. And do I have a motion from the council? You have to make a motion to do this, right? A motion to approve the committee recommendation to collect the sewer commitments.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it has, motion been made by Councilor Soroy, seconded by Councilor McPike. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, any comments? Yes.
Just a question, what brought about the omission of those 77 accounts?
76 accounts. Our former utility billing clerk retired at the end of December. This was the first billing that was done after her retirement. after that it was done, it was discovered that when doing the data entry into this program, it's not possible for anyone else to access any accounts while that data entry is being done. We were not aware of that at the time. What happened was that the 76 accounts that were not billed were accounts whose information were accessed as part of either paying a bill or looking up something for someone during the period of time that the data entry was being done. When it was discovered afterwards that these accounts had, because of that, not been billed, we consulted our software vendor on how to correct this issue going forward, and they gave us the ability to do that and to bill those 76 accounts.
And what information had to be entered? Where'd that information come from?
The information, if you look at an account to give someone a reading, to give someone an amount due, to do any of that, that's considered accessing an account. You don't have to change it, you just have to look at it, go into it. If someone made a payment on an account, if somebody looked up an address for someone, if someone looked up an amount owed, over the course of the billing, in the 2.5 days that it took, 76 different accounts were accessed in that way that invalidated the entry that had been made in the screen that shows usage.
So that'd be the reading that comes from the water department.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of accepting committee recommendation to bill these sewer commitments? Motion carries. Before we go on to new business, let's take a 5-minute break for recess.